Bullshit.
Pretend for a moment we've entered a parallel universe free of bullshit and full of bold solutions. That's what the No BS marketing show is all about. I'm your host, Dave Mastovich. Our guest today is Leah Lizarondo, but first, let's cut the bullshit. When a coworker drops in and asks to see you, how often do you say no? Apparently not very often if the results of a study by BaseX, a New York research firm, are any indication. The study estimates interruptions consume approximately 28% of the average workday, resulting in $588 billion of lost productivity. It's bad enough we stop what we're doing to handle an email, telephone call, text message, or drop-in meeting. What's worse is it can take up to 50% more time to complete tasks when you switch between them rather than complete one thing at a time. Obviously, managing interruptions well is essential to maximizing productivity. So how can we improve? First, we need to focus on our focus. We're not built to stay on task. Typical workers set aside whatever they're doing and start something else once every 3 minutes. So we have to make a commitment to focusing on the work at hand. Time management experts often suggest scheduling uninterruptible time during which the phone goes to voicemail, emails are ignored, and your staff and coworkers know to avoid the dreaded drop-in meeting. Another tactic involves managing interruptions so they are kept to a minute or two so you can help others, but not completely lose focus on your current project. Adopting a planning system is also helpful. It's not so much which system you use, but that you plan and prioritize activities on a regular basis. You might also take the advice of Jim Collins, author of the book Good to Great, who says that the most effective people he has studied have a, quote, stop doing or not to-do list. Collins believes this is more important than a to-do list because the not to-do list frees up time and energy for more productive activities. Regardless of the tactics you choose, communicate your approach to your staff and coworkers. Let them know your most productive work alone times and therefore when not to interrupt you. And ask them to tell you their preferences and show them you listened by respecting their time. The No BS Marketing Show is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/NoBS. Try a book like The Girl with the Lower Back Tattoo by Amy Schumer. You can download it for free today. Go to audibletrial.com/NoBS. Again, that's audibletrial.com/NoBS for your free audiobook. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Our guest today is at the forefront of the food revolution in Pittsburgh. Leah Lizarondo is a nationally recognized writer, speaker, and food advocate. She's founder of the Brazen Kitchen blog, where she advocates for food, health, and innovation, and is editor-at-large for Next Pittsburgh. She's co-founder of 412 Food Rescue, which we have to hear more about, folks. And she has a 15-year track record of leadership positions with global corporations and nonprofits. Leah, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dave. That time management little information really made me feel guilty.
Really?
Yeah, it made me take notes in my head, and I want to do it, all of it.
We all do it. It's like we think I even have the other one that says we can't multitask, so let's stop it. But we all think we're multitasking.
Exactly.
And we take an interruption. We think we're helping someone, but then it takes us so long to get back.
Yeah.
And everybody here says I'm the biggest interrupter, so so I have to watch and change my style. So I have to practice what I preach.
Right.
Well, you have such an eclectic, interesting background, and Pittsburgh really is seen as this foodie place. So I want to make sure we spend a lot of time with you telling us how you got to where you are, but then digging into where Pittsburgh is and where you see it going.
Yep.
So first, walk us through your educational background, your career journey.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in the Philippines, so I went to college there. And I majored in business and economics in college. And I interned at Procter & Gamble.
Okay.
Which I loved because, it really gave me, the beginnings of what I really knew was going to be my career. And, I'm not in consumer goods right now, but everything I learned there informs everything I do now. So my internship at P&G, I was in their marketing department, and I really, really loved it. I learned how everything we do and everything we see, every choice we make, and this sounds like a big brotherish kind of thing, but, it's been influenced somehow, and the way it has been influenced is, it's not something that's knee-jerk. We are being studied all the time. Each option we make, each thing we do. And it might sound a little ominous, but, when I use that, what I've learned there and the work that I do now, it's extremely fulfilling. So I started there, and then when I graduated, I worked for Colgate-Palmolive, and I worked there for many years, deepening my marketing knowledge, really learning what it means to, do global marketing, how advertising translates from one market to the other or doesn't, and the work that goes into that, and the discipline, really. And it's both, as we were talking about earlier, a mix of art and science. And really valued my time at Colgate-Palmolive, and really made, even now to this day, my closest professional and personal connections are from there. And, at that time, technology was starting to grow. And I was really interested in this new market. And what was interesting in technology at that time, this was the late 90s, was that there were all these young people launching companies everywhere, really quickly, because, there's not much product, not much work that needs to be, it's not like something that's a physical thing that you have to manufacture. You could program something, and the only limitation is your own time. And, there were a lot of successes, a lot of failures, but one thing that I saw was common in that market was that everyone was so young and no experience in product management or marketing. And everyone that had experience came from the traditional markets, just consumer goods at that time. So I went into technology, loved it, applied the same principles, all marketers have a sense of a roadmap in their heads. They know the steps they have to take. And I took a lot of companies through these steps, all these startups. And that was fun. And then I moved to Pittsburgh and went to Carnegie Mellon and worked for Innovation Works, kind of continuing my work in technology and startups. And then went back to New York and continued my work in consumer goods in a different capacity. I worked for an organization called Catalyst in Wall Street, and really the mission of that organization was to ensure that there's women in the C-suite, but their clients were all, Fortune 500 companies. And Unilever, the other consumer goods company, was one of my clients. And then moved back to Pittsburgh and really had the opportunity to, rethink and try to understand what I wanted to do next. For a while, continued my work in terms of advancing women. I was CEO of Dress for Success in Pittsburgh. But the allure of one of my true passions was, has emerged then to be unstoppable, and that's food. This was a calling, I guess, if you want to call it that I have, quashed for a long time because I was so involved in business and technology. And I made the jump to, food writing, just to understand what it's, what the lay of the land is in Pittsburgh. And that was a perfect way to do it because I had access to everyone as a writer. And, through all those years, kind of understanding and seeing Pittsburgh's growth in food and being part of that initial growth was really exciting to me. And at some point, I thought, I wanted to go back into doing something, not just writing about it. And Food Rescue, 412 Food Rescue is the product of that.
You had me at hello.
I know. That was a long soliloquy.
You had me at hello because you basically touched on everything that this show's all about. So I just have to go back because I'm excited. It's a true marketing guru. It's in your blood. It's in your DNA. You couldn't have asked for a better internship.
Oh, no. Yeah, that was the best. That really formed my... that was a formative year for me, definitely.
And then you go from a fantastic internship, if you're a marketer, to Colgate.
Yes.
Again, couldn't really ask for a better first job as a marketer.
Yes, that was amazing. My time there has been, I go back to it and always think that was the best decision I've ever made.
Well, talk about year one at Colgate, because one of the things that I believe happens when you have the bigger companies is they have the resources to train more.
Yes.
So talk about the first year and what did they do to help mentor you and coach you?
I think one of the biggest values that both P&G and Colgate gave me was that there are no positions where you're not doing something important. We are not given real responsibilities. No one gets coffee for other people. It's just you get in there, you have an objective, and, they teach you the steps, you learn from your boss, but you really do it. And as a product manager, I think because you manage this, cross-functional team, really as a product manager, you're a little mini CEO. The profit and loss for your brand is up to you. That's your responsibility in the end. So you drive, production, advertising, sales, R&D, even finance. And you make sure that that whole team is moving in concert, towards, what your goal is. So, my biggest project when I was in Colgate was, taking this detergent from a number 8, and I was working in Asia at that time. It was number 8 position in the market. Number 1 was, of course, P&G's Tide. And the mission of our brand team was, we'll give you this one last hurrah. If this doesn't work, this brand is axed. And so, we had, this budget that was nowhere near Tide. And, we had to figure out how to do it. And I think that's when I learned the value of market research and how important research is, both quantitative and qualitative. Now, quantitative research at that scale is very hard to come by. That's really a luxury at this point. After I got out of Colgate, I never had that much money for quantitative research.
That's how I felt after UPMC.
Right?
I was used to being able to drop 6 or 7 figures on research.
Right.
Now clients don't even want to drop 10 on marketing intel.
But that really informed everything. You get focus groups and, first you take thousands of households and you research how they use their detergent and why they shop that way and what they hate about it. And then you understand, okay, this is their main pain point, right? And then once you understand their main pain point and kind of start producing or forming a product that responds to that, every aspect of that product is then researched. The fragrance. How do you I didn't even know how much work goes into just picking that fragrance. And you test that fragrance against another fragrance. And it's this whole process. Packaging, you expose that product to the people who will buy it. And, will you buy this off the shelf compared to this brand? It's just mind-blowing to me how much work went into this one little product that we see on the shelf that we take for granted. We think it just got there, that someone, cobbled together that packaging and just put it on that shelf next to this product. But there was so much thought that went into that. And I think that was, for me, one of the biggest epiphanies about how important that is. And, we tested everything throughout that process and launched the product. And lo and behold, it's, in a few months, it was number 2. And we saved that brand.
Wow.
And that changed the way I saw the world. It sounds so trivial, but it's true. People's behaviors can be shaped. And in some way, as a marketer, that makes you feel powerful, right? I can make you buy this. And, I can make you prefer this. And it's because I understand how you make your decisions.
So here, Leah Lizarondo, with a great background talking about your time at Colgate and beyond. So help me out here, because on the exact same page, marketing intel should be the first step. Help me out if there's a CEO or an entrepreneur of a $20 million a year company or a startup. How do you and I explain to them that we're not trying to sell them something, that this marketing intel is necessary and they need to find the money for it? That's my albatross in life. Right.
I have to admit, I may not have the golden ticket answer to that one. I think one of them, and I worked as a marketing consultant for a long time, and you do these presentations, and in the end, they paid you, $100,000 to come up with this recommendation, and in the end, they do something else. And that's really frustrating for someone who is, who went through it. And then at that point, you're like, okay, well, washing my hands of that, know. So I think that one of the things that have been helpful are case studies, and starting there, that this is not something revolutionary that they're going to do. This is something that's been done for ages, and these have been the results.
I've had entrepreneurs who are impressive, talented. They knew how to create a product and they knew how to produce that to make a profit on it. But they would struggle with, and they wouldn't come out and necessarily say it this way, but you can read between the lines that they felt they knew what the customer thought.
Right.
And
at that point, I will tell them then what is, stopping you from growing, achieving the growth that you want. Right. And, I just needed a brochure. And, let's draw a brochure. And then, they will come back later on. Sometimes I feel like we can only educate so much. Sometimes I let them make that mistake. And then you hear from them again. It's like the brochure didn't work.
Great points. That's Leah Lizarondo. You're listening to the No BS Marketing Show. I'm your host, Dave Mastovich. So after Colgate, you talked about how you got into technology. Walk through that a little bit more and go through that part of your career. There's a lot of cool stuff there. Right.
So my first job outside of Colgate was in technology, but it was technology for consumer goods. So it was a company out of Connecticut that was developing product that, this sounds so academic, only someone in consumer goods would appreciate it, that basically scientifically analyzed shelf placement.
Okay.
And, would help a company like Conagra or Colgate-Palmolive or P&G, sell to, let's say, Target or, whatever retail location, why they should be in that shelf placement, right? So, and it was, just this one part of trade marketing that this product responded to. And that was very exciting to me. That's when I first understood this, the process that technology companies go through, which was completely different from manufacturing. And then, I wanted to, after that, complete my graduate degree. And I was really looking around for what I wanted to do. The easiest way was for me to go the MBA route. But I felt like both my experience at P&G and Colgate-Palmolive were the MBAs that I needed. And so I didn't want to redo all of that. So I went and picked Carnegie Mellon because of its strength in technology, but also wanted to learn what public policy is. Like, what is this other side of the for-profit world? Why do people do it? I had no idea, no clue. And I wanted to learn something that I knew nothing about. And so, both those focuses, was Carnegie Mellon's strength. So I attended Carnegie Mellon. And while I was there, I was also working for Innovation Works, which is, again, technology, but more towards venture capital. And I worked with new companies in terms of crafting their positioning, their marketing strategy, and really helping startups launch. Went back to, that was a time in Pittsburgh, though, where Pittsburgh was not very interesting. Not as interesting as it is now. That was I think that was in early 2000. And I didn't really like Pittsburgh at that time, so I went back to New York City and worked in Wall Street, still kind of in consumer goods, and didn't really think I would go back to Pittsburgh, but I did. I went back to Pittsburgh about 10 years ago now, and at that time had the luxury of really trying to understand what I wanted to do next. And, in that interim, I served as CEO of Dress for Success, which needed which was in crisis and needed to be turned around, and kind of did a lot of fiscal management just while I was thinking of what I wanted to do, and saw the Pittsburgh's food movement growing quietly. It was the start of that. It was really an exciting time. Trevitt Hooper started Legume. There's all these chef-led restaurants starting, which wasn't really there before. There was only Big Burrito, and there are restaurants like Casbah and all that. And so that was exciting, and I was always interested in food. So I decided to blog. Blogging was just starting. It started a long time ago, but it was really reaching kind of the peak at that time. So I started writing. I launched Brazen Kitchen, and I wanted to write about healthy food because I was interested in how do you make healthy food that was delicious, and even used some marketing stuff, that I learned there. How do I launch a healthy food website that doesn't, sound so hippie? Right? That was kind of cool, that you can relate to, that you feel like the food had flavor, wasn't flat. So launched Brazen Kitchen then, and then it was picked up by Pittsburgh Magazine, and I started Pittsburgh Magazine's first real weekly food column, aside from its kind of newsletter that it was launching at that time. And so had that privilege of being able to access everyone who was active in the food scene. And that column won a national award, and, was featured on NPR, and, had recipes on Oprah.com. It was really a fun time. And then I was hankering to go back into operations because that's really what I love to do. And realized that I wanted to do it in a very different way, focusing on food, but really responding to a gap in the market that wasn't being given attention to. And that's the fact that we throw away half of our food supply, which for me is a scandal. It's a scandalous thing that's been going on for years that no one has been talking about and no one has addressed.
So let's go over that stat again. We, as a society, throw away half of the food that we have.
Yes. So 40% of all the food we produce in the world goes to garbage. So we're feeding, landfills better than we're feeding those who are food insecure. And that for me was just a big problem that needed a solution. And, I co-founded 412 Food Rescue in 2015, and it's been a crazy ride since then.
Talk about it. When you founded it, about 18 months ago, probably?
I co-founded it in March of 2015.
Okay. So, right around 18 months. Good
Yes.
guess.
The No BS Marketing Podcast with Dave Mastovich is brought to you by Mass Solutions. Put our 3-step No BS process to work for you. Visit masssolutions.biz today to take your marketing to another level. It's all about bold solutions, no BS.
So who's the other co-founder?
So my friend Giselle Fetterman, who started the free store in Braddock. And I was hanging out with her one day and I saw that she was getting food from Costco, which is, a few miles from Braddock, but also not very far at all from the food bank. And my big question was, why was she rescuing this food when, the food bank is only a stone's throw away? Because that's what everyone perceives. Everyone perceives that, it's not a problem. The food banks and the pantries all get this food and it's used for people who need food, and that can't be farther from the truth, which is not to say that food banks and pantries don't respond to this need, but there's still a very big gap. And the reason is, merely transportation. No one can take it to the food bank, but she will pick it up and bring it to the free store in Braddock. So when it's open, she can, give away the food for free. It could be pastries, it could be salad, it could be deli meat, it could be turkeys, it could be fruit, whatever it is that they have that day that no one can pick up.
So wait, where does she pick it up from?
Costco in Waterfront. And that's, a few paces away from,
And where does Costco, is it all that they have their own, or do the people also drop off there as well?
No, it's just their own. You can imagine it's a big, warehouse, food.
And they're going to throw it away because it's past the date that they can sell?
Well, it's unsellable for many reasons. And I don't want people to think that Costco wants to throw out. They don't. They're just looking for a solution. But a solution was never available before. And that's why we're here, is because the pain point that we respond to with retailers is that, why can't someone just pick it up? Because if they do, we'll give it to them, because we want this food to be used by people who need it.
So help me with the understanding of just the meeting the Food and Drug Administration regulations and so forth. You're taking food that they can't sell because it's a past due date.
Well, so first of all, sell-by dates are bogus.
Okay.
It's not federally regulated.
Okay.
There's no federal agency that regulates these dates, except for one food. Guess.
Milk.
Actually, formula. Milk is not even regulated. So formula, the dates on that are fully regulated, because the nutrition levels degrade over time, right? And you want infants and babies to get full nutritive value of whatever they're ingesting. So there's a lot of confusion. There's expiration dates, there's sell-by dates, there's use-by. All these are confusing the market. And when food is, on its sell-by date, it doesn't mean it's bad. It's just a date that the manufacturer picked for peak quality. Doesn't mean it's bad. So, milk is not, when you say sell-by, it doesn't mean it's expired. Eggs, same thing. Any food. So, especially if you can imagine, sometimes coffee has a sell-by date. I mean, it doesn't go bad, right? So these unsellable food is what we rescue. So Costco was one store, and there is, 250 grocery stores in Allegheny County. So if you can imagine every day the churn that happens. So it's not only sell-by dates, it's also cosmetic standards. So, if it has a peach that doesn't look like a perfect peach, an apple that has a little bit of browning or spotting on it, or a banana that's yellow but not green. People only buy green bananas for some reason. So those all, need to kind of get out of the shelf and onto with surplus, and then the shelf gets replenished. And we pick up that surplus food. There's also
right now. So right now, Giselle Fetterman has, is it called the Free Store?
The Free Store. So she has everything from food to clothing and other like toys. So if we have food, clothing, and toys, then we can donate it there. If we don't want to donate it to a store that will resell it. So there's a number of free stores in the region.
That's what I was going to ask about. How many?
I don't. I think right now there's going to be 3.
And are they all operated by her nonprofit?
No, so they're all independently operated. There's one in Penn Hills and one in Wilkinsburg. But all over the United States, there's, stores, that function the same way.
And so that's why they all call themselves the same thing, the Free Store of Braddock, the Free Store of wherever?
I'm not sure. I think there's many different names. But there's also other food recovery organizations as well, but all structured very differently. So, but they all respond to one mission, is that to prevent food from going to waste.
Hear more of my interview with Leah Lizarondo on part